hear the music, Haden?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Good music.
Yeah, I like it. Well, some people like it, some people hate it. For the people who hate it, it's brand loyalty. Like, they gotta sit through it and suffer.
I don't know how you could hate it.
And for the people who love it, then they love it. But I gotta give out some, speaking of brand loyalty, Michael RCH, 1,000 Pine Points. Have you ever gotten Pine Points before, Michael? Because if you haven't, treasure it. Treasure these pines.
Congrats to Michael. All right.
Yeah, so 1 million, in case you didn't know, Hayden, if you reach 1 million Pine Points, you get an all-expense paid weekend with me at the luxurious Tropicana Spa and Casino.
Well, I feel like I should get at least 500,000 for coming on the show, right?
No.
God.
Okay, so I want to try to do things a little differently. I know you talked to Tom Jump. And
yes, sir.
I watched that, and I liked it, and I liked you, and so that's why I invited you to come on.
I appreciate that.
And but what I don't want to do is repeat the things you guys talked about.
Sure.
And in fact, most discussions about the philosophical arguments for God, I'm not that interested in.
Oh yeah?
No, I'm not, because maybe it's wrong of me, but like from the perspective of a non-believer. But I really think that if someone needs or desires to believe in a higher power, even if it's for bad reasons, if they need it to survive, if they need it to get up in the morning, if they need it for meaning, hope, and purpose, if they want to believe in some deistic type God or gods to help them survive, I actually think because of evolution, that's why we have these beliefs. And so I kind of wipe my hands and say, okay.
Yeah, so you just kind of wipe your hands of the philosophical arguments for the existence of gods, or you just don't find them that convincing, you would say?
Yeah, for me personally, I think almost all of them are basically arguments from ignorance.
Okay.
Except for maybe the ontological one. I think that one is just the argument from craziness.
I was going to say, if you find that one convincing, that one's supposed to end in certainty, but you didn't go that route.
No,
that's interesting. I guess I don't. Am I allowed to ask questions already, or was it too soon for me to? Oh, okay. I just kind of wanted to explore that because the philosophical arguments are really meant to start with things that are fairly certain, like the Aristotelian arguments begins with change, and so therefore it moves from something that almost, I guess, everybody would agree that change exists, and so that kind of lends a little bit more certainty to the argument as opposed to something like the Kalam cosmological argument, which is dependent on the universe actually beginning, and so that kind of there's a little bit more room for doubt in that one. But I just find that so like what line of argumentation would you find more convincing, I guess, is what I'm thinking.
For the philosophical arguments?
No, just something other than philosophical. If a
okay.
philosophical argument would not, and by that I really mean naturally any argument that you give is going to include philosophy. I mean, argumentation itself is dealing with reason, moving from premise to conclusion. So that's philosophy itself. So I'm taking it you don't mean that, but by philosophy you really mean like metaphysics or something like that.
Actually, a little bit of both. Like
okay.
Was it Stephen Hawking who said, philosophy is dead, and he was kind of joking, but kind of not?
I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. He had to have been joking because that's.
Well, I actually think I think he was kind of joking and kind of not. I think that what causes you and me to believe things is not from syllogisms, is not from deductive arguments, is not even from maybe inductive, but I think it's so complicated. I think probably we don't even get to choose most of the stuff we believe, but we get hopefully to choose what situations we put ourselves into that might cause an effect in us. So I really think that when I see Christians and atheists, or even just theists and atheists in general, non-believers, or even theists argue against themselves and using these types of syllogisms and philosophical arguments, I think they're just spinning in circles. I think there's so much, so many assumptions in the premises, and your worldview might be completely different than a Buddhist or a Hindu or a Muslim, and so even the whole idea of and or either and or both, it's like some people can hold contradictions in their head and be happy. I'm not one of those people, but apparently some people in the East and Eastern cultures can do it. But so this is why I don't really delve into the philosophical arguments for God that much, because I think where the rubber hits the road is in specific theism.
Okay.
And so the way you behave, I think, the way you vote, I think, the way anybody votes is based on what they actively believe. Would you agree with that?
Yeah. The way we vote and act is based on our beliefs?
Based on actively, deeply held beliefs, what we really value and cherish. It's like if you value certain
Yeah,
things,
I mean, I
vote.
vote based on what I think is based on what I value and what I think is valuable for humanity and things like that.
Yeah. So let's find areas of agreement, first of all.
Okay.
How to start this?
We exist.
Well, again, I want to get, yeah, that's an agreement. I believe I exist. But one thing that I think just baffles my mind, well, let me just say it this way. A friend of yours, a friend of mine, comes up to us and says, someone who's been dead for a long time is no longer dead. They're alive, and I saw them. Mm-hmm. So imagine a close friend of yours coming up and telling you that. You know, Myron, he's been dead for like a year, but I saw him the other day, and I talked to him.
Cold dead, yeah.
I ate with him, all this stuff. Now, are we different in the sense that I would say my friend is almost guaranteed, not, I'll leave the room for possibility, but almost guaranteed that my friend is, something's wrong with his brain?
I would definitely lean. I don't know if I'd say something's wrong with his brain, but I think I would lean.
I wouldn't tell him that, to his face, but
I would lean that something's probably up. But I would, if it was a close friend who I know doesn't tend to, isn't very charismatic or something like that, and make things up like this, and is very trustworthy, I would definitely pause and go, "What are you talking about?" I wouldn't immediately dismiss them because they're my friend. That'd be nice. Well, but I would definitely be skeptical. Yeah.
Get your lean no and lean yes cards out. Okay. I before we came on, the only thing I said to Haden was to make things like this. I want to try something new today. Oh, the lighting's horrible.
On mine or yours?
On mine, but you guys can read it. Okay. So I'm going to ask the question again. A friend tells us that a person has been risen from the dead. Do you believe him? We both say lean no. Okay, great. Let's see other areas of agreement about Christianity. The Gospel of Mark is the first gospel written. Wow, 2 for 2. The Gospel of Mark, whoever wrote it, didn't put their name on it. Okay, we could disagree. So, is the name of the Gospel of Mark on the Gospel of Mark?
It's not in the narrative. I mean, his name is mentioned in the narrative, but not in the narrative does he say, I wrote this gospel.
Okay, then why did you say lean no then?
Because every manuscript that we do have attributes it to Mark.
Let me refine my question then. Nowhere within the narrative of the text of the Gospel of Mark does the author say his name.
Well, I'm absolutely certain that that's true.
Okay, very good. There are things in the Gospel of Mark that I believe is fiction. Okay, we got a difference here. Why? Let me give you an example of what I think is fiction.
Okay.
In the Gospel of Mark. The Transfiguration.
Okay.
It's a story about, is it Moses and Elijah standing next to Jesus and people witnessing it? I think that if there was a video recorder at that time taping that whole scene, I think it would not come up on the tape that actually happened.
Okay.
Now, you believe it did happen?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, remember the question I asked you previously about if your friend came up to you and said they saw a person who was dead, now alive. You said you would probably not believe them. Is that
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Now we have a situation of the first gospel that's anonymous saying that this transfiguration happened, and you do believe it.
Yes. Yeah, that's true. You see it in a disconnect? Is that what you're saying? Or
yeah, I'm seeing a big disconnect because a friend of yours you don't believe, who you can talk to, speak to, go eye to eye, you don't believe, but an anonymous book you do. So help me understand that.
Well, again, I don't think the book is anonymous.
Well, in the definition that I said, doesn't give a name within the text.
In the narrow definition that you gave, yes. It's multiply attested. It's also our background information here is different because you don't believe in God. I do. And I do believe that Jesus rose from the dead, and you don't. So there's some, we've got some. What would you call that?
But let's say Jesus did rise from the dead. I'm going to grant you that for sake of argument right now.
Okay.
Jesus did rise from the dead, and God is real. Couldn't the transfiguration still be fiction?
Oh yeah, it definitely could be. But I think the probability increases given those two things that Mark is recording accurately.
And why do you think Mark is recording that as a piece of history?
As a piece of history? Like, why do I believe...
Yeah, like why do you think it's more likely to be history than fiction?
It's multiply attested in the other Gospels of independent sources, and also, like I said, if it's not possible at all if God doesn't exist. Miracles, I would take it, would be impossible. So that increases the probability that it at least could possibly happen on that worldview.
Let's go with the first one, the multiply attested. If I'm sure, I don't know this for certain, but I think there's at least hundreds of multiply attested testimonies of Joseph Smith and some of the things he claimed.
I have no idea about that.
But let's assume for sake of argument that that's true, that there was 100 attestations for Joseph Smith claiming whatever he claimed, like the golden tablets existed and so forth. And would that cause you to believe that these golden tablets existed?
If there were hundreds of independent multiple attestations to this?
Let's just go with attestations. Let's remove the word independent for now. We can throw that in later.
Well, the independent would be a pretty big factor, so I don't know.
Okay, so if it wasn't independent, you would say no, you wouldn't believe in the golden tablets? But if it was independent, you would believe in the golden tablets? If it was independently, multiply attested for?
That would definitely increase the probability.
Enough for you to believe it?
I would have to look at the individual reports, but possibly.
Okay. So do you believe we have independently attested reports for the transfiguration of that's seen in Mark?
For that specific pericope, I'd have to look closer, but the gospel narratives themselves are independent. In a lot of cases, I'd have to look at that one specifically.
Okay, well, that's a good question to ask. Another difference between you and I. Do you think the Gospels are independent of each other?
No, not wholly.
How much do you think there's independence? Like if you were to put a scale of 100% is independent, zeros, they're dependent. I think they're like down at 10. Very, very, very dependent on each other.
I mean, okay, so we have, most scholars think that Mark wrote first. That's why I said lean yes. We have some early reports in church history that would actually put Matthew first, but that's up for debate. I'll just go with the majorities of contemporaries or modern scholarship and say Mark went first. And then most scholars think that Matthew and Luke borrowed from Mark. And so that's where I would say they're not wholly independent.
So where would you be for a number? Like I'm down at 10. Like they're almost very much dependent on each other. Especially John's separate, but yeah, definitely Matthew and Luke is very dependent on Mark. Where would you be if I'm at 10? Would you 100 is very independent?
I mean, when you say 10, that would mean to me, or that seems to mean to me like they're the exact same documents. So I'm kind of confused as to what you're meaning by like a 10 being how much dependent they are.
I'm just saying that.
I mean, they definitely used Mark, like certainly, I guess.
Okay,
is that what
so,
you get?
Yeah, so would you say they're more dependent or more independent? If Matthew, Luke used Mark? Would you
But I mean, I don't know. I'm confused by that question because I'm saying they certainly did use Mark. But
Okay. So
I'm
does that mean
confused by
that
what you
they're,
mean.
so in what
I don't know
sense,
how you could then. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
and so in what sense are they independent?
Matthew and Luke have sources that are unique to just them, and then Matthew has sources that are unique to him, and Luke has sources that are
Okay,
unique
excellent.
to him.
Okay. But with the transfiguration, let's say the transfiguration hypothetically was fiction,
Okay.
and Mark writes about it, and then it's found also in Luke and in Matthew.
Yeah.
And let's say in that situation, they're dependent on Mark, and so they also write about it, but they change the story maybe a little bit. What about this attestation makes you believe it? If it could be just fiction and Matthew and Luke just used Mark to write about it. And the Old Testament maybe as well.
Yeah. If it was fiction, what would make me believe it?
No, let me put it this way. I think it's fiction because I think Matthew and Luke just looked at Mark, looked at maybe some Old Testament verses, and created a narrative. So here we have attestations that maybe are a little bit independent, but mostly dependent because they're using Mark, they're using the Old Testament, like to come up with names like Moses and Elijah and so forth. And yeah, I don't see how attestations, your first reason for believing in the Transfiguration, would make me come even a smidgen closer to believing it. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, no, I see what you mean for sure. So if it is, let's assume it's fiction, okay? There's parts of the Gospels that are fiction.
Okay. What would it take for you to believe in the Transfiguration?
What would it take?
Yeah. If
you
were the same as me and we both agreed it was fiction, what would it take for you to believe it wasn't?
Oh, okay, I see what you mean. So starting with the assumption that it is fiction, what would it take for me to believe it if we had early independent eyewitness sources saying it?
Okay.
Multiple.
Okay. And when you say independent, you mean not like what we have in the Gospels, because you said they were dependent on each other.
Well, we can look at the individual pericopes, like that narrative right there, and say, what is the correlation between how Matthew records this scene? What is the correlation between how Mark records this scene? And if there's significant overlap, then we can say that they did not use independent sources for this. So with Mark, he's probably, I say probably, if Mark really is writing the eyewitness testimony of Peter, then that's obviously where he would have got it from, because Peter would have been present at that moment. But I'm saying what would convince me is if we have multiple independent just eyewitness testimony that this did happen.
What is what does the phrase eyewitness testimony mean to you? Like if you were
like if I walk away from here and somebody says, and I tell somebody that I did an interview with Doug.
Okay. And if someone was hearing that third hand, your eyewitness testimony, do you think it's important that they know that it's you who said it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So did Mark say he said it?
Mark say who said it?
Did Mark say that he saw the resurrection, or the transfiguration?
No.
No. So we don't have an eyewitness from Mark.
Mark would be recording the eyewitness, who could possibly be Peter.
Okay, so he's recording it, but so are you saying if we come from the assumption that the Transfiguration is fiction, you would believe it if you had multiple independent eyewitness accounts and people who talk to independent eyewitnesses? Because Mark wasn't an independent eyewitness.
No, Mark's not the eyewitness in this scenario. Peter would be. And so you look at a number of different things, like I said, or other attestations to the same events. And I don't know where it's going. I'm sorry.
Well, this gets back to my very first question I asked you. A good friend of yours comes up to you and says that they saw a person who, Myron, who was risen from the dead. And I asked you if you would believe Myron. He's a friend who you know and trust. and he says he saw this fantastical thing, and we both agree that we would not believe it. But it seems like you would believe in something like the Transfiguration based on a source that doesn't put their name on it, and who gets its information secondhand.
Well, the difference is, I didn't say that I wouldn't believe him. I said I would lean no initially.
Right.
Yeah. And then I would have to...
Initially is a good point.
Yeah. Okay. But I would have to, go look at other details about this event that my friend's recording about this person that rose from the dead. Did that person actually die? Obviously, they didn't rise from the dead if they weren't actually dead. And then I'd have to see if there's any other witnesses of this or something like that.
How would you figure out if this person actually died?
How would I figure out if they died? I mean,
how would we know if Myron actually died?
I mean, there could be an obituary.
Did we have an obituary for Jesus?
No, we don't have an obituary for Jesus, but we would today. Myron would have one, probably.
How else could we figure out if Myron died?
How else could we figure out if Myron died?
Yeah.
If there were witnesses to his death?
Okay. And would you believe Myron died if these witnesses didn't put their name, didn't identify themselves, and basically their lack of names, it was just a story in a book, writings in a book? Would that be sufficient for you to say Myron died? If we picked up a book and said Myron died, but there's no name on it, who said it, no date on it, no citing of sources, it's just Myron died, it's written down on paper, that wouldn't cause me to think Myron died.
There's different ways we can figure out. I'm sorry. Ask the question one more time. I had a thought, now I can't remember what it was. Sorry.
Would you believe that Myron died based on reading a page that says Myron died with no name on it, no citing of sources, no date, just says Myron died? And we're trying to figure out, hey, did Myron actually die?
Oh, based on that scenario, I'd say I don't know.
I would say no. I'd lean no.
Yeah, I would lean no based on the scenario you gave, yeah.
But isn't that exactly what we have in the Gospels?
We just have a book that says somebody died?
No. Well, for the death of Jesus, yeah, we just have no names on, just text saying Jesus died, right?
Just text saying Jesus died. Okay, yeah.
Okay. So this is, I'm giving you like little pieces of reasons why, not just me, like people who, and not just atheists, why Muslims, why Jews, why anybody who's not a Christian reads the text of the New Testament and says, oh, okay, is this a good reason to believe something? And I bring up the things like Myron. I bring up things like the Flying Man. I don't know if you've ever heard me talk about the Flying Man.
The Flying Man? No.
It's a hypothetical question of, it's actually a really good one, and it's a tough one for me to answer. I'm going to try to answer it today, but pretend I'm serious.
Okay.
My great-great-great-great-grandfather, his name was Johann. He could fly.
He could fly.
Unaided. Like, you could strip him down naked, he could still fly.
That'd be interesting.
He went to the Grand Canyon about 150 years ago.
Yeah.
And just ran and leaped off the edge and flew.
That's impressive.
Now, here's the hypothetical question.
Okay.
Well, it's not hypothetical. That's a hypothetical scenario, but here's the question. What would it take for you and me to believe that it actually happened in history?
Yeah.
It's tough because it's right before video cameras. It's right before, like, maybe 150 years ago we did have photography. Yeah, we did. But what would it really take for you to me to not just think of this as a joke? This is not a joke, Haden. This actually happened. We're talking about my lineage here, my great ancestor. And I'll be offended if you don't believe me.
Okay.
What would it take for you to believe that?
What would it take for me to believe that your naked grandfather jumped across the Grand Canyon and flew?
He wasn't naked at the time.
Oh, okay.
My great grandfather has class.
Now we're getting some contradictions in the story. Now I'm just kidding. Yeah, I guess without, you said no video footage and stuff like that. Let's say in this scenario that there were multiple eyewitness testimonies that he did.
Okay, but what exactly would you have to see or be presented. When you say multiple eyewitness testimony, tell me exactly what you would need to believe. Like, would you need to actually talk to these people? You can't because they're dead, right? It's 150 years ago.
Right.
So what exactly do you mean?
They wrote it down? I mean, I can't talk to them. They're dead.
Okay, so they wrote it down. And if they basically said that they saw my great-great-great-great-grandfather fly, you believe it?
If there were multiple early eyewitnesses, it would increase the probability.
But would you believe it?
I don't know, maybe.
I don't think I would. Because even if they put their name on it and said, hi, my name is Joe Thompson. I live at this place. My wife is so-and-so. The year is such and such. It was a glorious sunny morning. I was at the Grand Canyon, and lo and behold, I saw this man run, jump, and fly.
Yeah.
If I picked up a book and read that, that wouldn't convince me.
If I picked up one book that said that, it wouldn't convince me either.
Okay, and I'll tell you this much. If I picked up 10 books that said that, it still wouldn't convince me. Now, at what, and here's why. Because I would say, well, wait a minute. Are these truly independent? And wait a minute. It's like seeing a fantastical magic trick. If 5 people believe it, if it's a really good trick, 100 people are going to believe it. If it's a really good trick, 1,000 people are going to believe it. The better the trick, the more people are going to believe it. And so, but now let's bring this back to the Gospels.
Okay.
Well, first of all, would you believe it or not if I presented you 10 independent, written down on paper, people saying that they saw my great-great-great-grandfather fly?
That in and of itself would increase the probability.
But do you think it would be enough for you to personally believe it?
That alone, it would get me closer, but probably not.
Okay, so we're agreed. For me, it wouldn't even come close, but so we both wouldn't believe it. But with the Gospels, we don't even have that situation. We don't have people saying, my name is such and such. I live here. I'm married. Today I saw this. We don't have anybody in the Gospels who writes in the first person who states their name to say that they saw, let's say, Jesus rise from the dead.
Yeah, I think this just means that this is not the way we're going to discover who wrote them.
But you see my point. My point is, why would you not believe in the flying man when the evidence is better than what we have in the Gospels?
I don't think it is better.
Well,
what made you say it was better? I guess I missed that part.
Because we have a situation where someone says their name and writes with their own hand what they saw.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, they don't say their name in the narrative, but I don't think they are unnamed or that they're anonymous.
Okay, so if you picked up a book where the person doesn't say their name, but 100 years later, people in northern Arizona said, oh, yeah, that was Joe Thompson. He wrote this. 100 years later, they say, Joe Thompson wrote this. We pick up a diary. It says, I saw Johann, my great-great-great-grandfather fly. He doesn't put his name on the diary. He just says what he saw. And then 100 years later, we find evidence of saying, oh, that was Joe Thompson. He said that.
I wouldn't have any reason to believe it wasn't Joe Thompson.
But would that cause you to believe it?
It would cause me to believe that it was written by Joe Thompson, and then I'd have to know a little bit more about the Joe Thompson fellow, see if he was in the area at the time, things like that.
Okay. What you would have to know more about Joe Thompson?
Yeah, I would ask the person that knew him. What did you know about Joe Thompson?
But earlier when I asked you, would your best friend tells you, who you know greatly,
yeah,
that Myron rose from the dead, you said you wouldn't believe him. You would lean towards not believing. Why 150 years in the past would you believe this Joe Thompson guy? Like, oh yeah, he wrote this diary. You don't know anything about him really, and maybe you could piece something up together. But if you don't believe your best friend, why would you believe Joe Thompson from 150 years ago, or Joe Thompson? Sorry.
Well, I said I would believe that Joe Thompson was the one that said it or wrote it down.
Right, but that wouldn't cause you to believe in the flying man, or would it?
If the other ones could be equally verified, then like the other eyewitnesses, I might.
Okay. But you would or would not need to actually know that these eyewitnesses wrote with their own hand and identified themselves.
Yeah, that would definitely help.
But would you need it?
Would I need it?
To believe it?
There could be some other way, but let's just say, okay, I did need it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you see how you don't have that in the Gospels?
We don't have what?
People identifying themselves, writing with their own hand and identifying themselves, maybe even dating their work, saying...
Well, they definitely give us a good indication of the date in which it was written.
They do?
Yeah. Based on the names that they use, based on the places and the different leader.
So when did Mark write his work, his gospel, the Gospel of Mark? When was it written? Does he say when it was written?
Oh, does he say when it was written? No, the consensus is probably shortly after AD 70. I would probably take an earlier date.
Okay, but that's what I'm getting at. I'm saying that...
I'm saying there's other ways to know these things than the scenarios in which you're presented. Like we can know the date otherwise than they like if they don't say when the date was, that doesn't mean we can't know when the date was.
You think we can know the date of Mark?
Most historians have a good idea.
Really? I think it's a huge range. I've seen some huge range. I've seen some people dated as early as 40 and some as late as 100 and whatever. I think most say it's between 65 to 75, which is still a decade. But I'm talking about Joe Thompson who's saying, hey, my name is Joe Thompson. I live here. The date is such and such. And today I saw a man fly. And I'm saying my guess is even if I presented that to you, all those criteria, my guess is you still wouldn't believe that man flew. But yet, you believe in things like the Transfiguration with much worse evidence. Am I wrong?
Are you wrong about the evidence being worse?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, if someone was accusing me of a capital crime like murder, and they didn't identify themselves, sign it, date it, I don't think any jury would put a lot of weight on that eyewitness testimony account.
Okay.
Would you disagree with that?
I'm not a detective, but I'm sure they have other ways of discerning the truth value of eyewitness testimony.
Did you have a question for me on this topic?
On this topic? No, I wrote down like a few things that we might be able to do the lean no, lean yes thing with.
Okay, let's do that.
Do you want to continue to do it, or?
Yeah. Let's see if we can find areas of agreement, because this was a huge disagreement between us. Actually, maybe not. I think you kind of said that you wouldn't believe in the flying man based on that evidence. And
based on the scenarios that you give, probably not. I don't think they're analogous, but.
Yeah, where we disagree is I think that the evidence I presented for the flying man was better than the evidence we have in the Gospels.
Okay.
And yet I'm seeing you not believing in the flying man and yet believing in things like the Transfiguration and the resurrection based on worse evidence. Okay. So that's how I see it. Now, I know you disagree.
Well, it's just helpful to understand the way you see it, so yeah.
Okay,
give me some things. Definitely give me some things to think about. Appreciate it.
I got my papers here. You ask me a question and I'll...
Okay, you want me to ask some questions? I just wrote them down like as fast as I could whenever you told me that. But
no problem. And if you think of new ones, and if I think of new ones.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that? Okay, well, I guess I should do it the way you did. Believing in God is dumb or irrational?
Believing in God is dumb or irrational. If that's all I have to work with, I'll say lean no.
Okay.
Because it all depends, right?
Yeah. Do I keep going, or is this...
Yeah, no, keep going.
Okay. Something can come from nothing.
Something can come from nothing.
Well, we have a lot of agreement.
Yep.
Something.
Actually, hang on.
Yeah, go ahead.
Everything we experience coming into existence has had a material cause. Whoa, very good. We agree. Oh, the Kalam people are going to hate you for that.
Not necessarily, but I see what you're saying. But yeah.
Okay, your turn.
Something physical can be eternal.
This is where we're going to disagree, I'm sure of it. Yeah.
But I'm actually not opposed to it. I just lean no. I have like my arguments for the existence of God, or the ones that I find the most convincing, would not depend on a universe that began to exist.
This one's just for you. Well, no, I got to ask one for both of us. Okay. Adam and Eve literally existed, meaning there was a guy named Adam who existed, who was formed from dust, and Eve was formed from his rib.
Lean yes, but I'm fine if they didn't.
Can we explore that one a little bit? Because this one baffles my mind.
Yeah, sure.
Why do you believe that?
I lean yes, but I guess if you put a gun to my head, I'd say I don't know. I mean, I lean yes because I believe that Jesus rose from the dead, and as far as the theological reliability of the Old Testament goes, he seemed to approve of that.
Okay, so you believe what happened in Genesis because of the New Testament, mostly. Is that fair?
Yeah, mostly, yeah.
Okay.
So, I haven't studied the Old Testament as much as I have the New Testament, which is probably true of most Christians.
See, this is where I think we disagree, because I think you and I are animals. We're higher primates. We're in the ape family. I think we evolved over hundreds of millions of years. I think the evidence for that is overwhelming. And so I think that whole idea of Adam being formed from dust and Eve being formed from the rib of Adam is a story that has no bearing in actual reality. If we had a video camera and we could somehow figure out when and where that took place, and if we turned the video camera on, we would not see a man poof into existence and then a woman get a rib, whatever. So having me said that, do you just reject common descent, evolution?
No, I don't reject evolution. I don't know. That's the consensus.
The consensus is I don't know?
No, the consensus is that evolution is the correct. Yeah. I'm fine with that. I don't know that, but yeah.
Well, help me understand
because I haven't studied it at all, like zero.
Help me understand, though, but why you would lean yes in believing that Adam was actually formed from dust and Eve from his rib.
Okay, so you mean literally formed from dust and stuff like that? Yeah. I don't really lean more. I don't know.
Okay.
It seems like Jesus would have thought that there. I don't know about that either. But it seems like maybe it was a historical, or the belief was that it was a historical person. I don't know about all that being formed from the dust and stuff. Could be metaphor or something like that. I don't know.
Okay, so is your position then of agnosticism? You don't believe, or you don't know, or you do know? I'm a little confused. Do you believe it or not?
So if I was pressed on this, I'd say these people think this, these people think that. Haden doesn't really know.
Do you think it's possible or even plausible that could have happened if evolution via common descent is correct?
Is it possible that God formed man out of the dust if common descent is correct? That's a good question. I've never thought about it.
Because I know some Christians try to have both, because they want to.
Well, I mean, the correct question was the intent of the author of Genesis to take this, like literal or whatever.
Let's say it's 100% true that evolution via common descent happened. There was no literal Adam and Eve, the way I described it, the way Genesis describes it. Let's say you and I go in a time machine and we find Jesus of Nazareth, and we stop him on the street, and you're about to pull out your iPhone to record it, but you thought, I better not because this might cause trouble. So you put it back in your pocket, and you and I ask Jesus, was there a literal Adam that was formed of dust and an Eve that came from his rib? What do you think Jesus would have said?
That I don't. I mean, so the only way that I can answer what Jesus would have said about something he did not explicitly say is to project what I believe onto him. And as I just said, I'm fine either way. So I think, actually, if you look at Jesus and the way he responds to questions, he probably would respond to us with a question.
Yeah.
He'd probably ask, Haden, why do you care? Or something. I don't know.
Yeah. And then I would say, Jesus, don't be evasive.
Yeah.
I'll pull out that iPhone and record.
I have no idea how Jesus would answer that question with any amount of certainty.
I have a good idea based on my reading in the New Testament and what my background knowledge is of first century Christians. I would say that Jesus would have said yes, because I talked about why marriage is between one man and one woman, because I referenced Adam and Eve. Of course they were real. Haden, douche, don't be silly. Don't ask silly questions like this. Don't you realize that if you ask questions like this, people will doubt? No, you wouldn't say that. But
I would love to get Jesus slapped like that. No, I'm just kidding. But I would say, I take when you read the first few chapters of Genesis and its historical context, it seems unlikely to me that the author of Genesis is trying to communicate scientific or material understanding of the world.
Right, but this is why I brought up Jesus, because initially you said that you believed or you leaned yes to that narrative because of the New Testament. I remember asking you that. And
I mean, I don't have one that says I don't know. But.
Yeah, I understand. Because I had Randall Rouser on. I don't know if you know him.
I've heard of him, yeah.
Yeah, I had him on a while back. And he freely admitted that the human part of Jesus could have not known certain things or been wrong about certain things. I don't know how he separates the human part of Jesus.
That's definitely a theological question that some people would take issue with, and some wouldn't.
I think a lot of Christians hate him for saying that.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure they do. I mean, I know Christians like that, of course.
Yeah. I have some what I think are good hypothetical questions that really bother Christians, and you probably have heard some of them.
Okay.
And have you heard my Noah one?
Your what one?
Noah one.
Oh, Noah, no.
Noah, no. So you're up in heaven. Okay, you're you're sitting.
Made it.
You made it. You're sitting next to.
It was a close call.
You're sitting next to Yahweh.
Okay.
And Yahweh says, "See all those people down there? Ugh, man, horrible people. I need to kill them. I need to get rid of them." Except for Noah's family. I like Noah's family. Noah,
nice guy.
Class A dude, and his family. And their grandfather did. And so he says, but, Haden, I like you. And so I'm going to let you decide between two options of how to get rid of all these evil, unrighteous people. Mm. And I'm providing these options for you, so you don't have to worry about what's right or moral or good, because I'm providing both. I'm not going to give you an option that's wrong because I'm God. And so Yahweh says, I can either get rid of all these men, women, children, toddlers, newborn babies through flooding, or just poofing them out of existence. You get to choose, Haden. Poof or drown?
Poof, 100%.
Why did you choose poof over drown?
Less pain.
Why do you think God chose drown over poof?
No idea.
Does it bother you that he did? Or first of all, do you believe that actually happened in history?
It seems like a flood could have happened easily, and I wouldn't.
Do you believe that God, Yahweh, caused a flood that killed people in history?
Yes.
Okay. So now let's get back to my original question. Why do you think he chose the painful route over the poofing route?
Yeah, I have no idea.
And does it bother you that he did?
Does it bother me? Yeah, a little bit, yeah.
Excellent. Thank you.
People don't say that?
People are. I've had so many apologists on my show. I shouldn't say so many, but I've had a few.
Sure.
And then I've had others that have been in text form. And they will fight tooth and nail and saying that they'll say something like, "Oh, I'll just go with what God did. Who am I? I'm just the clay. He's the potter." Blah blah blah. They won't admit that makes them feel uneasy.
Oh, sure. Yeah, definitely makes me
Greg
feel uneasy.
Kokel actually came close. I asked this question to Greg Kokel, and he didn't come out and say it, but he alluded to the fact that he didn't like it or that he questioned it.
Yeah.
But very good. So here's one that's related, but it's the New Testament version. That was the Old Testament version.
The New Testament, right? Okay.
This one's might be a little harder. I don't know. You're up in heaven with Yahweh again, and he tells you that the wages of sin is death. And Yahweh tells you that the wages of sin is death, and that Jesus, who's on earth at that moment, you're up in heaven, but Jesus is on earth.
Okay.
He says, Jesus, my perfect son, has to die.
Okay.
But again, he leaves it up to you. God's will be done. Jesus will die, but you get to choose how.
Okay.
And your choices are, and both are moral because God is providing these options. What is your preference, Haden? Do you want Jesus to die from a massive stroke instantly or bloody torture on a cross?
Yeah, I would take the instant death. I'm doing good.
You're doing really well, because a lot of Christians wouldn't say that because they feel that pits them against the God they worship and serve.
Oh, I don't think it pits me against it. I mean, obviously, I'm taking a different route than what God would have chosen in the scenario. But anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, see, if you did something horrible to me, Haden,
yeah,
I mean, like, really bad, a part of me would want to hurt you back.
Yeah, me too.
However, I do think it's possible for us humans to forgive each other without physical violence.
Yes.
So my question then is, why couldn't God do it if we can do it?
Oh, he could have, yeah.
And yeah, see, and I appreciate your answer. You're saying, yes, the God I believe in could have killed Jesus in a much...
He could have not killed Jesus at all.
Right. He could have just forgiven, right?
Yeah, I mean, some people would, some theologians would argue differently, but I mean, this, like, just from like a philosophical point of view, could God do X or Y? Yeah, I mean, as long as they're not contradictory, then yeah.
So remember when I asked you, does it bother you that God drowned the people in the Old Testament? Does it bother you that God tortured his son or had allowed it to happen?
There's something about the way that Jesus died and the fact that this is supposed to be substitutionary for my sins that bothers me. For example, when I first became a Christian, and felt, deep angst about my sin, my initial thought was, God, you should send me to hell. I'm a horrible person. I've done horrible things, and I really have done horrible things. I deserve to be punished. And I think probably a lot of Christians struggle with this too. I almost didn't want to be forgiven. It bothered me that somebody else would take my place. That's what I mean. Like, it bothered me that Jesus would die in my place because it was me that did it. I deserve to be punished.
Right. And that's unfair, right?
I mean, it'd be unfair if he wasn't a willing participant. Yeah.
I would say it's unfair even if he was.
Okay.
So let's say you have a friend named Myron. I have a cousin whose first name's Myron. I think it's a horrible name.
Myron's
for all you Myrons out there in the world, that's a horrible name.
Sorry to all the Myron.
Myron. But let's pretend you have a friend named Myron, and I do something. No, you do something horrible to him. You have a friend named Myron. You do something horrible to Myron.
Okay.
And let's say you steal all his money. He has $10,000, and you steal it.
Mm-hmm.
And I say, "Don't worry, Myron. Don't worry. Here's $10,000. You can have my money."
Yeah.
Not only is it unfair for me to do so, I think it's wrong.
I mean, if you're willing,
you get off scot-free in this scenario. Like, you get off. Like,
yeah.
I paid the penalty for you. You get off free. I think that it's immoral for you to not have any type of penalty against you, or some type of responsibility for what you did.
Okay.
So I see Jesus doing that exact same thing. Jesus died for you, Haden, for the wrongs you did. You said you felt like you did many things wrong.
Yeah.
I think you should pay for it, not Jesus.
Yeah. Oh, I think so too. But he willingly stepped in, and
yeah, but that was a bad thing for him to do, to step in, just like it's bad for me to step in and give Myron $10,000.
Well, I don't agree that it was bad for you to step in and give Myron $10,000. If that's what you want to do, it's your money.
If it meant that you get to go free, yeah, then it's a bad thing.
Okay.
C.S. Lewis said that. He said that if a man were to forgive the trespasses of another, that he himself has not been injured upon, that it's from the pits of hell that a man would do such a thing, that it's maniacal. I don't know the exact quote. I'm actually pretty close to what his exact words here. And
yeah, I haven't read it, but yeah.
But then C.S. Lewis says, but if God does it, then it's okay. Yeah. So if Jesus was God, it's okay. But any other man was to do it, like if I was to do it for Myron, or for you to help Myron.
Yeah, I haven't read C.S. Lewis, that quote, but yeah, it's definitely scandalous. It seems unfair. Yeah.
Okay, here's the $1 million question.
Oh, a million Pine points?
No, not a million Pine points. $1 million.
Oh, come on. If I answered honestly,
Pine points are worth more than dollars. What exactly do you think you would need to learn, see, believe, whatever, in order for you to leave Christianity?
To leave Christianity? Huh. There's probably a number of things that would cause me to no longer believe that the resurrection was true.
Like?
I mean, the obvious one would be, I don't know how you would verify it, but let's say you could. If there was the body of Jesus, that would certainly be like, okay, he's still dead. But
I'm glad you point that out, because it would be very hard to determine.
Right, so that's too strong, yeah.
So we need something
a weaker point would be maybe some first century eyewitness testimonies to the contrary. A number of them or something like that.
Okay, so if we found a document that said that Jesus didn't rise from the dead in the first century, you would reject Christianity?
If it was from one of his disciples or something, yeah. I mean, I don't know if just one would or not. I'd have to weigh. Well, that would definitely increase my probability of rejecting Christianity.
How would we know if it's from one of his disciples or not?
We'd have to have external verification and things like that. Yeah, so it would take some work, but it's definitely possible.
Like, even if we found a first century document dated to the first century that said, "Hi, my name is Peter, and by the way, Jesus did not rise from the dead." That's it? You're out?
No, that would definitely cause me to doubt. Yeah.
I'm wondering if we don't have some, maybe not the disciples, but there were a lot of competing Christianities back then, were there not?
The Apocrypha?
Well, I'm thinking, this is not first century, though. This would be more like first and second century. But so that's interesting. Do you think that the level of evidence would be higher to disbelieve in the resurrection than believe it? In other words, because when you said I would need to see a first century document that says from a disciple that says that Jesus didn't rise from the dead, and then you ask for verification that it was a first century disciple, I get the sense that the level of evidence you needed to disprove it is higher than to just believe it in the first place. Am I wrong?
Yeah, I think so, based on what I hear you saying.
Okay. So would you say that you would need proof to the contrary, or strong evidence to the contrary, rather than?
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. Would you need strong evidence to the contrary that Jesus did not rise from the dead, or would you just need enough reasons to doubt the positive side? Enough reasons to doubt, maybe Mark was written in.
Yeah. So both of those would work. Yeah, that's a good point.
Okay, because that's where I'm at.
Yeah, no, I definitely see. I don't see from folks like, at least what I'm seeing from folks like you and others who don't believe it and things like that. It's mostly casting doubt on the arguments that are given for it.
Right.
Is that correct? Is that what you mean?
No, that's exactly right. Because I don't think I need strong evidence to.
No, that's true. Yeah.
To not believe that a man flew off the Grand Canyon.
Okay, so that's a good point. That's a good distinction. I was thinking like positive evidence to the contrary, but yeah, if you could deconstruct the arguments for it, yeah.
So if you became 100% convinced or 99% convinced that all four gospels were written after 70 AD, would that have any impact on you?
Well, whenever I give my arguments for the existence or for the resurrection, I just go ahead and assume consensus on the dates because that is the consensus already, isn't it?
Okay. Well, I earlier you said that you
Oh
personally.
no, I don't. I do think there's a good argument to be before AD 70 or 70 CE, but I don't assume it if I make an argument for the
Okay.
resurrection. No, I just go ahead and assume consensus.
You assume consensus. Sorry, you're confusing me. You assume
Oh, sorry,
consensus.
okay. So I assume with the consensus date for the Gospels whenever I make an argument for the resurrection.
I see. I
But
got you. I got
I
you.
don't actually believe that.
Okay.
It's like for the sake of argument.
Yeah, I
Or
got you.
let's just assume that they're written when most people say they are.
It,
I actually take a minority
it's
position.
sort of like what Tom Jump does when he's talking about naturalistic pantheism. He doesn't actually
Yeah,
hold that position, but he
yeah, I
uses
think
that
so.
as
Yeah,
a outsider test for faith. Okay.
yeah, he seeds it for the sake of argument. Yeah,
Okay.
I think. I don't know.
Um, like, do you believe currently because of the historical method? How much does that play a part in why you believe? Well, let me back it up. Let me back it up.
Okay.
Can you name the time, the date of when you became a Christian? Not the time, but the date.
Can I name it?
Yeah, like, do you know when you became a Christian?
Yeah, that was 7 years ago, or 6. I'm about to be 27. So
Okay. So you between 20 and 21 you became a Christian?
yes.
Can I ask you what happened in that year?
Yeah, yeah. So let's see. I was okay. So I'd done 2 years at a junior college here in my hometown, and then I moved to Lubbock, Texas, and I was going to do a couple more semesters at a junior college out there before transferring to Texas Tech University for petroleum engineering. Was I think it was what was on my radar at the time, and then I had an experience driving down 19th Street in Lubbock, Texas, on my way to a college party, and literally and metaphorically turned my car around and went home, and haven't been back.
Now, this experience you had, can you tell me about it?
Yeah, yeah. So I'm doing what I do every weekend. Going to a college party, and then all of a sudden, I mean, it felt at the time like I just hit a brick wall, and I'm not a very emotional person, but became very emotional. I'm sorry, very emotional about what I would now define as sin, but sin wasn't really anything on my radar at the time, and became convicted of the way I had been living was immoral, which morality wasn't really something that I really believed in. Kind of believed in like a subjective morality at the time, and went home and confessed to God.
Hmm. And but why Christianity? Like, you can confess to.
Yeah. So at the time, I was thinking this wasn't something that just came up from within inside of me. I'm not an emotional person. Nothing traumatic had happened in my life. I didn't have any prior belief that the way I've been living was wrong.
May
So
I ask how
my,
you were
I'm
living
sorry.
that?
Go ahead.
May I ask how you were living that caused you?
What I would now describe as like promiscuous.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, continue. Sorry.
And then so it was my interpretation of that event that this was something external that had happened to me. And so I went home and thought about that and interpreted that as the Holy Spirit's conviction.
There's many thoughts flowing through my head right now.
Sure.
One of my thoughts, I'm just going to brainstorm this with you here. One of my
Okay.
thoughts is why you even thought that having sex with girls at the time was wrong in the first place. Why you felt guilty about it. That's one thought I had.
That's exactly my question. I didn't feel that way.
You didn't feel guilty.
No, I have felt no guilt about that.
No, but
No.
during that experience you did or no?
Yeah. during the experience, I became convicted that this was sinful, and I don't know why that happened because I didn't believe that.
Okay, gotcha. So you weren't.
That's what the disconnect was. The disconnect was so weird for me when it was happening. Was I don't believe this, but
Okay.
this is the conviction that I'm feeling.
Okay. And that led you to believe that there's a God and that sin is real. Did you believe a God at that point or no? Before?
Not really. If you'd have asked me, I probably would have said yes, but more like because I was raised here, so I kind of got to check that box. But I don't really actually believe in anything.
So your parents
Like,
weren't believers?
I'm sorry.
Your parents?
Yeah, my parents are Christians. We went to church and things like that every once in a while, but it was not something we very rarely ever talked about it.
Okay, I'm going to be very honest with you because, and
Sure.
this is on record. This is on tape from many prior conversations I've had.
Yeah.
Don't ask me to dig it up.
Okay.
But I have said for years now that for many Christians, they become Christians because of an experience they've had between the ages of 18 and 22.
Yeah.
And for many of them, they are born and raised in the Christian belief. But they reject it. Then between the ages of 18 and 22, they have some type of tragedy experience, amazing experience that causes them to change, to start researching or whatever. But it happens between those ages, and it's usually involved with some major experience or tragedy. And then after they're done with that experience and with the research or whatever, the reflection of that experience, they end up adopting the core propositions of the religion they were raised in. This happens in Christianity, it happens in Mormonism, it happens in Islam, it happens in Hinduism, I think. And I've talked to people where this has happened. And so now,
Me too.
So now as an outsider, if we were aliens and we're studying humans, we're outsiders of the human race, and we're studying these phenomenon of the human experience, the human condition.
Yeah.
Would we say that what you experience actually is attributed to a real God that really convicted you, that led you to him, or that maybe you had some, I know you said you didn't feel guilt or anything, but maybe it was subconscious. Our brains are complicated things. It was lying in the back of your brain. Maybe you heard something of, well, if you lived in Texas, of course you heard like all the time, you have sex before marriage, you're going to burn in hell. I'm sure there's some Christians in Texas who say that.
I know you say that, but I live here and I really don't hear it that much. But I guess
I did the extreme version.
I'm sorry?
I did the extreme version there.
Okay.
But do you see what I'm getting at? Like if there was a Haden in Pakistan who was driving their car on the way to some type of party, and they felt convicted, and they turned that car around and went to the mosque and prayed to Allah and became a serious, devout Muslim.
I don't know if on Islam there's something equivalent to the Holy Spirit. I could be wrong, but
no, they would say Allah causes things to happen in people's life. Whether they don't call it the Holy Spirit. Maybe they do. Maybe some of them do. Some of them don't. But I've seen on videotape, at least, Anthony Magnabosco interview Muslims who will even use the words personal experience, that they believe in a personal God. Now, not all Muslims believe that. They believe that Allah is so great that you can't even be personal. But some Muslims do. But my point is, I don't think you and I would say that would be a very consistent, a very good, reliable way to say, oh, yeah, Allah is real. Because
no, yeah. So this is just how I became a Christian, and I would never. Well, I guess I would never use it. Actually, with my friends who are atheists, for them this is the strongest evidence because they knew me and they know me now, and something they haven't become believers, but they think if something like that happened to me, then I would believe. But
I wouldn't. Not even close.
Okay, I mean that's fine. I'm not saying that they would be warranted in doing so. I'm just saying that's what I talk with my atheist friends all the time about arguments for the existence of God.
You were I think you're a Stoic, right? You're kind of like me. You're not very emotional.
No, I mean it's actually, and I don't say it braggadociously. I wish I was more because I got married in January, and I'm learning. I definitely have a lot to learn about these sort of things.
Yeah, I don't say that. I kind of like being a Stoic, but I'm sure my wife wants me to be a little more emotional. I kind of think being a Stoic has huge advantages because you You might not experience the highs and the lows, but
it's an odd thing to be a Stoic and not tend towards the philosophical stuff. You said you didn't really like the philosophical stuff.
Well, when I say Stoic, I don't mean philosophically. I mean like more emotionally. Like I don't get easily excitable, but I kind of heard you agree with me that.
Oh yeah, I was going to say that if I was going to try to convince somebody that God exists, I wouldn't say I had an experience.
But why does it convince you? If you agree that it wouldn't convince anybody else, why did you become convinced from that?
Yeah, like I said, whenever I experienced it, and I mean, I know myself. I mean, I know you said there could have been something subconsciously. Don't know how I would know that or not. It's subconsciously, so it wouldn't be in my conscious.
Because that experience led you to believe Christianity is true, right?
It led me to believe that there was something external and immaterial that was convicting me of my sins, and that sounded a lot like Christianity, yeah. And so then I went and looked at, then I later look into it, the same scenario you're describing of somebody in their early 20s looking into whether or not their beliefs are true or not. And I know you say some people, I don't know if it's most or not, but some people do find that what they believe is true, so they believe, and a lot don't. I mean, I don't know when you became a non-believer, but you would be evidence of that, right?
Yeah, I became a non-believer in my late 30s. I started doubting in my early 30s, mid 30s.
You were a Christian?
Oh yeah, for 30 years. Yeah, I was a Christian before your parents even thought about you.
Well, maybe they were thinking about me. What kind of a Christian, I guess, would be my question.
Oh, I was all of the kinds. No, that's not true. That's I was not a Catholic.
Okay, let's say like a serious or like a nominal or.
Oh no, serious. I was me and my wife. We ran the youth group, the K through, was it 8 ages? We were in charge. I was on stage singing, doing drama, playing saxophone for.
You say, oh wow, you're talented.
For decades. I was, yeah.
Were you familiar with? This is just interesting. Were you familiar with apologetics at the time?
Oh yeah, I could speak most people under the table with apologetics.
You probably give the argument better than I can, huh?
Yeah, probably I could. Yep.
Which part first made the house of cards crumble, so to speak?
It's a good way of asking it. It's there's many parts. I would say step number 1 is to pull your beliefs out of you and critically examine it from an outsider's perspective. So I think that's what started happening with me. So I would say, like, why exactly do the Mormons think I'm wrong? Why do even this version of Christianity think I'm wrong? Why does Muslims, Hindus think I'm wrong? And really saying, okay, it's not a part of my identity anymore. Let's pull it out and analyze it. And then, so basically, you have to allow your defenses to come down and not treat your belief as such a precious thing that needs to be protected. Now,
yeah, don't treat it like a sacred.
Right. But my guess is once a person, not all, but many Christians, when they do that, when they take their belief and not treat it as a precious thing that needs to be protected, I think it's over. I think it's over.
Yeah, I think they become there's a large, I don't know how large it is or if it's even large, but there's definitely a subset of Christians who hate me for even doing apologetics because they're afraid that people will no longer believe just from doing apologetics.
Thank you for saying that. Yeah. I've been saying that for a long time, and other apologists.
Oh, hey, the number one comment I get on my blog, I've been doing my blog longer than I've been doing the YouTube channel, and the number one comment I get is from what I guess is the proper term is fideists. People who are, I like to, Tom Jump said this, and I thought it was funny. They are methodological atheists, even though they claim to believe in God, because they would agree with Tom Jump's definition of atheism that there are no good arguments for the existence of God. They would agree with that statement, and they're Christians. And that's the number one person that I get push, probably not the number one comment I get, but the number one kind of trying to push back against me on the blog is from Christians like that. They can't stand me.
Well, yeah, being a YouTuber doing this sort of thing can be lonely, but I kind of agree with that criticism, because I don't want to scare you here, but there's going to be
with the fides.
No, with the sentiment about apologetics being dangerous.
Yeah, so with the fides, yeah. Well, I think it can be, I mean, if you want to use the word dangerous, I just wouldn't use it that way. Look, if God doesn't exist, I want to know. If he didn't rise from the dead, then I don't want to believe in the resurrection.
But you don't want to lead others away from God, right?
No, I don't want to do that either. Yeah, no, I don't want to lead people away from the truth one way or the other. It scares, or it doesn't, it scares me to a degree that I'm leading people away from the truth in general by giving arguments for the existence of God and the resurrection.
Because I can almost guarantee you that someone is going to watch this live stream, probably not today, but in the future, who are only watching it because of you, not me, because of you. They like you, and they go, oh, what's Haden doing talking to this atheist guy? Let's see how this pans out.
Yeah.
And they're not going to agree with me, but they're going to hear something I say that will just resonate a little bit with them. And they're going to say,
oh, yeah, for sure.
And,
yeah.
then that's going to cause them to doubt. And then maybe,
yeah, but,
maybe 5 years from now, they're going to leave Christianity.
Well, it should cause you to question, if that's what you mean by doubt. The term doubt could be a little nuanced.
Yeah, but, I use it to mean question, yeah.
Yeah, it definitely should. I mean, there's things you said right now that I'm already running through my head. I need to go research on both sides.
Yeah. Well, that's good.
Yeah, no, I have absolutely. No, I want people to believe what's true. Or, I mean, at least I flatter myself as that. I guess you don't have to believe me. But if Christianity is not true, I do not want people to believe it.
You just said something, and it brought back a flashback of, I've had a lot of these types of conversations. But I had a conversation with, was it a Hindu?
Yeah.
I forget.
I didn't mean yeah in the affirmative. I have no idea. Sorry, go ahead.
But I forget if it was a Hindu or a different religion, but it wasn't Christian. And I remember asking or saying things to this person, and this person was starting to question their own beliefs.
Oh, yeah.
And you could visibly see it. You could audibly hear this person express doubts. Guess what happened? They left talking to me. We ended the live stream, and about a month or so later, come back and talk to me again. And you know what this person did? Everything that I brought up that caused them to doubt, they went to their spiritual leader, guide, and teacher, and they got the answers for those questions.
Did they get actual? So they come back. Did they get actual answers, or did they more or less just?
Well, in my opinion, no. But they got answers.
Well, I mean,
that
I know
sufficed
answer.
for them.
Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, they got answers that sufficed for them, and so they came back. And what ends up happening is I made them stronger in what you and I would deem as a false belief.
Mm-hmm.
And when you said that I today have asked you questions that made you think, well, maybe I need to go research such and such, I predict that's exactly what's going to happen to you.
Well, I intentionally said I'm going to research both sides, and so I'll try to find some people who don't believe the contrary, people who do believe as you do, and read what they have to say, and then find people on the contrary, and try as best I can to weigh the evidence. That's what I flatter myself as. I guess you don't have to believe me. Maybe I'm just going to go read the one-sided.
I believe you, but I think what we believe and why is so complicated that
sure
it's until you and I can both figure out what is really propelling us to believe or disbelieve things. Mm-hmm. Until we find that thing, all this other stuff is just going to be fluff. It's going to be, okay, Doug mentioned such and such. I'm going to research this now and look at both sides. But really, I think what it comes down to, and this is why I like street epistemology, is because it helps us get rid of all the garbage and figure out exactly what, or not exactly, but what's most likely to be propelling you to believe or me to not. And I think for you, it's that experience you had when you were 21.
I mean, I can understand why you might say that, but the whole I didn't get to tell the whole story, but the whole experience becomes unraveled whenever I almost leave Christianity while I'm in seminary a couple years later.
Oh, really? You almost left Christianity in seminary?
Yeah, so seminary caused me to doubt more than any atheist ever has, is what I like to
I've said
say.
that too. Yeah, seminary can be dangerous. So what about seminary, or what did you learn that caused you to almost
Well, it
leave?
wasn't actually anything particular that I learned at seminary, so maybe I'm kind of jesting about seminary being the cause of the uh, doubt. But it was just I get to seminary, and did you go to seminary? Or?
No, no.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Sorry.
But if you go to, no, I don't mean sorry you didn't go. I meant I don't know why I said sorry.
I'm sorry that you went.
But if you go to seminary, you dive really deep into uh, not necessarily apologetics. Unfortunately, I think they should, but and philosophy. I think that's starting to change. But you dive really deep into like systematic theology and stuff like that. That's what I would call a little bit deeper. But when you go that deep, or at least what happened for me when you go that deep, you also, it's kind of hard to explain, but what happened was I went so deep that I had to go, why do I believe any of it? That we're not addressing that one. And that's kind of the big one. And I said, well, I believe it for what you just said, for that experience. And while I don't think it was bad, I would have liked for it to have been better. And then I ultimately start, again, you don't have, for the audience, you said you did believe me, but for the audience, you don't have to believe me. But I started reading both sides, started very simple. Actually, it was at the beginning, it was mostly one-sided. I was pretty much only reading atheists. And I started, very simple with like the God delusion. And then got to a point, at least my doubt went so far that I went to one of my atheist friends who I have a number, and they're my best friends, actually. And said, you know what? I think I'm going to have to go to church tomorrow and tell my pastor I'm done. And then I just kept digging and found some answers. But that's how deep it went. I mean, it was.
Did you have a girlfriend at the time?
Yeah, I have a girlfriend at the time. Not at the time I was doubting.
Okay.
Good. But good try. No, I'm just kidding. I didn't actually. But I did like a year later or something. There was a brief time I was all, I don't know how to word this or if I even should. I was all about that before. And then whenever I became a Christian, it just kind of left me. I didn't really care to date. I was too.
You were a player?
I'm not trying to say I was a player, but
Well, you got a bit of a Clark Kent thing going on there. You take the glasses off, put on the suit. I can see it.
You can see it? Well, I appreciate it. No, yeah, I did have a string of girlfriends before I became a Christian. I guess is the nicest way to put it.
If you left Christianity, let's say you would have left it at that time and not come back, how do you think your life would be different today?
How do I think my life would be different today? Yeah. I mean, I would say from a practical standpoint, not much.
Interesting.
I mean, there might have been some initial, I was almost convinced that I should. And so it almost happened. So it's really not much of a hypothetical. And so those scenarios began to run through my head. What's going to happen? I'll no longer work this part-time job at the church I was working. But
like, do you think your life...
I don't have that job now. So, I mean, the money was never anything. Like, I ended up giving up that job for different reasons. But
if you would have left Christianity back then, do you think you would be more likely to be a nihilist, or would you have less meaning and purpose? Would you be unable to love others, or...
No, none of that. No.
See, we're same. I left Christianity. I left...
I think all of those are mostly influenced by the culture that you and I share.
So what, some people don't like this question, but what about Christianity do you really need? Like, let's assume it's true, but why do you need it?
For the type of reasons you just gave?
No, just...
Like morality or personal fulfillment?
I meet you on the street.
Okay.
And I ask you, why does anyone need Christianity? No, why do you need Christianity? Why does Haden need Christianity? How would you answer?
Well, from one perspective, it would just be do you want to believe something that's true or false? And if it's, Jesus rose from the dead, I want to believe that because it's true.
Okay, let's assume it's true, but why do you need to believe that?
Well, I guess you don't. Yeah, I'm fine with saying that. Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
See,
No,
that's
I like to see it as much as I possibly can, and you don't need it.
See, some Christians would answer, some Christians who are listening right now and would say, no, you need to believe it so you have eternity with Jesus in heaven.
Or if you want that, then you'll need it. Yeah.
And avoid hell, and you need it to help you through the day. Some Christians might say they need, because Jesus promised to comfort you and guide you and direct you through the Holy Spirit. And if you
that helps some people, but other people can do that with different beliefs.
But all those answers that I just gave, you wouldn't give. You would just say, no, you don't need Christianity.
The one about if you want to, I guess the way I would say it is, if you want to live forever in God's kingdom, then you do.
Okay.
If you don't need it to be happy in this life, are you happy, Doug?
That's such a interesting question.
Do you find satisfaction or fulfillment in this life?
I find great.
I don't doubt you. I think somebody who comes along and says, "Nah, he's lying because he's not a Christian," is pretentious and kind of a jerk.
Yeah, we all have sad days and we all have happy days, I think.
Yeah, Christians do too. Well, there's actually a very serious example of this that just happened. Christians can be depressed and things like that.
Yeah. But I do find great meaning and purpose having this channel.
Yeah, so do I. I think I like talking about this, and Tom and I talked about it a little bit. It's just a cool time to be alive that we can even do stuff like this. It's very unique.
Do you think it's bad of me to cause doubt in Christians?
No, I think you should.
Even if there's a hell?
Even if there's a hell, do I think it's bad for you to I cause doubt in Christians? I'm not going to say more than you do, but quite a bit. Even if there's a hell, do I think you should cause doubt in Christians?
Let's say the traditional view of hell is correct, and I cause Christians to doubt so much that they leave Christianity. Haven't I done a terrible thing?
Oh, yeah. Done a terrible thing.
Mm-hmm. I have.
Yeah.
I sometimes joke.
Presumably, you would be joining them.
There's a lot of apologists who hate me. No, that's too strong. They don't like me very much. And
it's not false.
And sometimes in text form on Facebook or Twitter, they'll ask me, Doug, why are you doing what you're doing? They want to get me to say things like, well, I'm trying to cause apologists to look silly, like I said that to Randall, and that's true for some.
Are you though?
For some, yes. With Randall, yeah. But,
okay.
But do you feel like I'm mistreating you or trying to make?
No, I don't feel like you're mistreating me at all. I don't know how I feel. No, I don't feel mistreated.
Yeah,
I like you. I think this is fun. I like thinking through the hypotheticals and the scenarios and trying to make them as analogous as possible to what I really do believe. I think that's certainly useful.
But those defensive type apologists who will ask me what's my true goal or whatever, I'll just sometimes without even an emoji, I'll just say, well, my goal is to lead the youth to hell, and then just leave it at that. And it's like they don't, because the very conservative apologists. Sure. They will say, "Oh, he's telling the truth." They don't know how to handle it. Like because they think that I'm under the power of the evil one.
But you don't believe hell exists, obviously.
So. Right. Obviously, I don't. So that comment, from my perspective, yeah. But I know that they believe it, and so I'm giving.
Well, them, we like to ruffle people's feathers.
Yeah, I'm giving them what they want to hear, and so.
Yeah. So I like to. I don't like to ruffle people's feathers, but I've sometimes let people have what they want to hear. I feel like I've done that in this interview. I think I've seeded what you might be surprised that I've seeded. Are you surprised at some of the things I've seeded?
Yes. I think.
And I would call myself a conservative Christian.
I think you have an advantage over a lot of the apologists I do talk to is because you're younger.
Okay. In what way would that's weird. My age would give me an advantage. That's cool. But I'm interested to hear why.
Well, because you have, no offense, but you have a lower following.
Okay.
You have less to lose.
Oh, okay. Yeah, definitely true.
Yeah. So you're just up and starting. And so in a strange way, you can be more honest with me than someone who's a pastor or a preacher who has a following, whose income is highly dependent. Like they're not going to.
No, so actually this brings up a good point. This may be arrogant of me, but I'm hoping the channel does take off and becomes more like those other bigger ones. I don't know that it will. If it doesn't, it's perfectly fine with me.
It's going to take off now, huge, now that you've been on the Pinecreek channel.
You think so?
Hey, everybody, subscribe to Haden's channel. I'll put the link in the description for you. There you go. I'll try.
But I think there's some good points that you just raised, and I'm not saying I'm necessarily going to make my future decisions based on this alone, but like I'm not in ministry right now. I had an opportunity to recently and declined it actually for other reasons, but now that I think about these sort of things, I've actually been thinking about what you just brought up, and I really want to take this to the end, wherever it leads, for better or for worse. I don't know which one would be better or worse. The truth is just the truth. And I want as few hurdles in the way as possible. And, like you said, that could potentially be a hurdle if I'm a minister or something like that.
Yeah.
It could easily be said of me. Of course, he's not going to. He has something to lose. So I want as little to lose as possible. Yeah.
Yeah. There's people popping in my head right now that I've talked to in the past, and it's like, this is their livelihood. They don't know how to do anything else other than be a pastor, preacher, apologist.
Now, some of these atheist YouTube channels are so big that they do derive their income off.
Yeah, and
do you have Patreon or anything like that?
No, in fact, I've never asked for money. I've never asked for a like. I've been on YouTube now for over close to 3 years. I've never asked for a like. I've never asked for a subscriber. I've actually told people to click off my channel. I've told people to remain Christians. I understand. I'm a capitalist. I lean towards capitalism.
Sure.
And so I have no problem with people making money off of Lean True. And so I have no problem if people want to make money, but I think it goes both ways. I think, rationality rules. He has close to 300,000 subscribers.
Got a ton.
If I was to guess, he probably pulls in with Patreon probably 15,000 a month.
Dang.
People think I'm exaggerating when I say that.
I need to be an atheist.
But you look at his views and you look at his Patreon, I think I'm not too far off there. At least 10K a month. Now, but here's the thing. If he became a Christian, he might make even more.
That's a good point, and it's one that I was going to bring up countering myself, which was if I became an atheist, my channel may take off.
Yeah. We should switch for a year. I'll become a Christian. You become an atheist.
Yeah, exactly. We can do that, which is what I was, yeah. So this is a good point that though these sort of things can impede on your decision-making, it can actually work the other way too.
Yeah.
If I don't know, but if rationality rules became a Christian, maybe you get a really sweet book deal. I don't know.
But money,
he might not, but I have no idea.
But what I think has a bigger impact than money is love.
Yeah, he may find
that was such a softy thing for me to say.
I'm sorry, what?
That was such a soft, emotional thing for a
it's
stoic
not very
to say.
stoic. It's not very stoic of you. But that's another good point as well. Yeah.
Yeah. And
I agree with all that. It can, yeah.
And I think like if you're a Christian who loves Jesus, it's harder to be objective about the evidence.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm on record of saying that until you can say something like, I could not care less about Jesus, then start looking at the evidence.
Well, I mean, if you could care less about Jesus, you're not.
But in the love sense, like you're right. You can't say that, right? It's like, if you say for at least 30 seconds that you don't love Jesus, for those 30 seconds, are you really a Christian? Can a Christian even say these things?
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of like when some people, and you haven't said this, but I have heard from some people say something like, find me a source from a non-Christian, and saying that Jesus rose from the dead. And I'm like, well, if they said he rose from the dead, they'd be Christians. So.
Well, what's interesting? Here's another interesting thought for you this is from my friend Camille. He first came up with this, or maybe, I don't know first, but
I've watched the one with Camille, and I don't know much about him. Could you give me is he a non-believer?
Yeah, he's an atheist.
Okay. Because that never came out in the video that I was watching, and it was just boggling my mind. I was like, what is this guy's? But go ahead.
Yeah, he's just like me, except smarter but not as good looking. And he said, find me a historian, a professional historian who didn't come from Christianity, is not a Christian, but became a professional historian, looks at the evidence for the resurrection, and became a Christian because of it.
Yeah.
We've had this challenge for over a year now, and we've had people say contact such and such, but we've not had anybody saying, yes, I'm a professional historian, was legitimately not a Christian, was not even a backslidden Christian, nothing. And I became a Christian because I looked at the evidence of the resurrection.
Oh, okay, became a Christian because of the evidence. Okay, gotcha. Yeah. I think most historians would agree with if you take a Gary Habermas or Michael Licona approach, I think the facts that they give, most New Testament scholars and historians would agree with, but most historians would not make the conclusion that they make. So in other words, the evidence that they give is not that controversial. I don't think. I guess I could be wrong. But yeah, most historians don't agree with their explanation.
Do you know why that is?
I guess they don't find it warranted. I mean, I don't guess. They don't find it warranted.
Yeah, but I actually have something here. Let me bring it up.
Sure.
This is why they don't, even if they agree with those 4 minimal facts, this is why they don't believe it.
Sorry, I can't see that.
I'll make it bigger here.
Okay.
They don't believe it for the same reason why they don't believe the minimal facts in Mormonism. Like fact number 1, Joseph Smith taught from the beginning that he was translating from the plate, so therefore it's not a legend because it started from the very beginning. Number 2, Joseph Smith's 3 witnesses, Harris, Cowdery, and Whitmore, at the same time saw the angel Moroni and the golden plates. So, hey, this can't be a hallucination because there's no such thing as group hallucinations. So they actually saw these plates. Minimal fact 3, Joseph Smith and his followers were willing to suffer and endure martyrdom for their preaching. Joseph Smith was killed by a mob, and he never recanted, and there's no record of him once recanting on Mormonism, so therefore he can't be lying, right? Number 4, Joseph Smith was an uneducated farm boy who could not have written the Book of Mormon, so that shows that this is not natural in origin, that this is indeed a miracle. Now, here's 4 minimal facts for Mormonism, but this does not impact you and me one bit.
Maybe we should be Mormon. I'm just kidding. No, I don't know anything about those claims.
It's very interesting. Like as an atheist, I use Mormonism all the time as an outsider test for faith because the evidence is better than it is for Christianity. It's so good, in fact, it's easier to dismiss because there's so much evidence. We know the personal life of Joseph Smith and how he caroused and had all these women and stuff, and so we can have a negative view about him, but we don't have the backstory of Mark, Matthew, Luke, John, Paul, or maybe a little bit of Paul we do, and so if we had better evidence, it might be easier to dismiss Christianity, but it's just enough to it's kind of floating there, like what actually happened back then. And so these minimal facts, the reason why professional historians can agree with Habermas and still reject it is for the same reason. We can look at the 4 minimal facts for Mormonism and reject it. By the way, fun fact, did you know that we have 4 signatures of people stating their name, dating, and signing a piece of paper saying that they saw the golden tablets?
No, I didn't know that. I literally know nothing about Mormonism, like nothing.
But we have that in history of, you can Google it. But the thing is, if someone were to come to you on the street and say, Hayden, do you believe that there was actually these golden tablets that Joseph Smith found that had the words of God on it? No. Or the directions of where, yeah. And I think you would say no. I'd say no, we don't believe that. But why not? We have 4 attestations signed, dated, which is way better than we have than in the Gospels.
Yeah, so the parody can be useful if it actually is analogous, and I don't know if that's
it's not analogous. It's better. It's better than the Gospels.
Yeah, so if it's not only analogous but better, then it could be a useful parody, but I don't know.
Yeah. Anyhow, we've been going for an hour.
I mean, I'm just admitting that I literally know nothing, and if that's us seeding a lot, then so be it. I don't know much about Mormon.
Like for me, I use Mormonism for the outsider test of faith because I think that's the best way to have people question the consistency of their beliefs.
If somebody approached me on the street and gave me the scenario you did, and it sounded analogous to what I believe about Christianity, then I would say, I better look into that.
Yeah. Well.
So yeah.
Yeah. It's it's interesting how we believe some things and don't believe others. Like I'm not excluded from that. Like we have intuitions because of our culture, how we were raised. It's like we're more likely to believe one thing over another. And
do you believe? Sorry, it sounded like you're about to wrap up, but I did want to ask: do you think that what you're talking about, these intuitions and kind of the psychology of belief? Do you think I could have came to faith in Christianity because my parents told me it was true, because I had some experience when I was 20 years old that confirmed what my parents told me was true? Mine didn't actually. They encouraged me to investigate for myself. But in this scenario, all of that, like the worst possible scenario that Doug on Pinecreek would just have a heyday with on the psychology of belief, do you think all of that could be seeded and it still be true?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
that was the main question I had throughout all this, but okay.
Yeah, I don't know how many times where I've had apologists yell genetic fallacy.
Oh, okay.
To me, and
it doesn't sound like the way you're using it is a genetic fallacy, but if you were to say, therefore it's not true, then that would be a genetic fallacy.
I don't think you could, if someone took the time and scoured every single minute of content I have, you'll never find me saying that. I could be wrong, but what I do say is that all those reasons you just gave with your parents and the experience and stuff, that doesn't make it false or true, but it ought to cause you to doubt and question.
Oh, you certainly should. And I agree. We agree on that.
Yeah.
That's why I did in seminary. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, this is fun.
It was really fun. I really enjoyed it. It's funny that you emailed me. It took me so much by surprise, but I guess I should have expected it because Tom Jump mentioned you to me afterwards. And
well, it wasn't Tom Jump. It was like I was driving in my car one day, and I wasn't thinking about you at all. And all of a sudden, I had this strong sensation that I should email you.
Oh, I see. Okay.
And I turned the car around. I immediately got back.
Literally
to the
and
office.
Metaphorically, and went home. Yeah.
And but yeah, I'll contact you later, and we'll do the switch. You become an atheist for what do you want to do? A month, a year, and I'll become a Christian.
I'll give it a month. If I don't see any money or book deals by then, I'm going back. And then I'm gonna go contact B&H Publishing and tell them that I was an atheist converted to Christianity. See if I can get a book deal from them.
Well, Edgar Curie just donated $24.99 saying, "Hey, Doug, thanks for doing this on the weekend." You're very, very welcome, Edgar. Glad to see you here. We're up to 160 people watching on a Saturday. You guys should be raking leaves or something, or doing yard work. You shouldn't be inside listening to us too.
I've got a small yard out front of my duplex. So.
But anyhow, this was fun. Yeah, you did surprise me with some of your answers. Pleasantly surprised.
Well, good.
And yeah, and it wasn't so bad, was it?
No. I don't feel uncomfortable at all. I don't feel attacked or whatever. Yeah. I'd love for you to come on my channel. Do you do interviews on other people's channels?
Sure. Yeah, I can do that for you.
Yeah. I think that'd be fun. I'd like to introduce you to my audience. I want them to hear it, which is from the horse's mouth.
Sure. As long
you're not a horse.
As long as you're okay with leading people to hell, I'm glad to come on your channel.
Okay. I'm okay with people thinking for themselves. I'll say that.
Okay, so I'm gonna pretend I'm Yahweh for a second during the times of Noah, and I'm gonna, instead of drowning you, I'm going to poof you out of existence, and myself, poof, and I'm gonna start the music. And actually, I'm gonna take some questions and comments here. You can stay on here, but if anybody has any questions or comments, you can tag me. You got 2 minutes to ask Haden a question or myself.
I should have been watching the live chat on a different screen.
I was watching a little bit, just to make sure nobody was... I've set the settings on my channel pretty extreme, so not even swearing is allowed. Because I'm a good atheist.
You're a good... I don't know what I was going to say.
I want conservative Christians to feel welcome here.
For sure. If you want to swear, it won't bother me.
I actually get, if I was to guess...
Do you swear a lot?
No, I don't. I never swear. Almost never.
Really?
And if I do, I whisper it.
How come?
Because I was the way I was raised.
Okay. Just kind of left over. You don't really actually think it's wrong or anything.
Jim Major has asked Haden, what gospel do you believe was written first? He already answered that, Jim. He says Mark.
Hey, and I like this Jim Major's character, just the guy with the mustache, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen a couple of his videos. Kind of had him on my list to go watch a few more.
He's a man of debauchery and chicanery, and I'm sure he says the odd swear words, so you want to avoid him.
He has goats.
He has goats? Does he really?
That's what it looked like on Twitter.
Nico says, will Haden commit to now investigating Mormonism? Oh, do we?
I will probably actually look into Mormonism. I have a book on it somewhere that I never read. Sorry. An apologist actually sent it to me to do a book review, and I hadn't done it. So that would be the apologist side. I'll go read somebody that's actually in the Mormonism camp and see what they have to say.
What denomination were your parents? Asked C. Brown.
In Southern Baptist.
Southern Baptist, okay. Which makes sense in Texas.
It does.
Nenology says, thank you, Haden, for coming on. We'll sub to your channel. There you go.
Appreciate it.
You got at least one sub. Dev Null asks, does Haden think Jesus could have held false beliefs? Great question.
Yeah, leans no.
Okay, so unlike...
but there are some theologians, I mean, like you were talking, what did Randall Rouser say?
Yeah, Randall Rouser believes that the human part of Jesus could have false beliefs, yeah.
Yeah, so that's one option. I lean no, but I guess I'm not opposed to it if there's a good theological explanation of that.
Jim Major says, tell Haden to freely contact him whenever. I'd love to talk to him.
Sure.
Yeah, I'll give you... Actually, hang on. This is serious.
Okay. I'm back. Poof.
If you convert Jim Majors to Christianity, I will give you 500,000 pine points that you asked for
That's
earlier.
not enough. I need the whole thing. I need 1 million.
But then we have to go to Vegas together.
This sounds like fun, dude. I'm a lot of fun. I'll go to Vegas right now. I will take a red-eye flight to Vegas with Pinecreek.
How do we figure out Jim Majors becomes a true Christian and not just a fake one in order to... Because maybe he'll have pity on you.
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm not Calvinist, but that's a good question.
Devnall also asks, are you an inerrantist? Do you think that's such a loaded word?
Yeah, it's a difficult one. I mean, I think if you look to like the Old Testament, they had pre-scientific beliefs, but they're not presenting it whenever they mention these sort of things, when they say like the bowels are the seat of the emotions. That's obviously false.
I'm going to ask his question a different way. Is there anything in
sure.
the New Testament that you think reads as historical that probably isn't?
No, there's nothing in there that couldn't like be said that the author didn't intend it that way, that they intended it a different way.
Okay, so there's your answer, Devnall. Rai Rez asks, have you read any books by Alan Watts?
No, I haven't. Do you know something about this character, Alan Watts?
No, the name sounds familiar.
No, I've literally never heard it, but I'll Google it after this. I'll Google it now.
Let's see here. Yeah, I turned the music off for you guys.
This is fun. I don't have live episodes where I do Q&A. I don't have that enough subscribers to do that. British philosopher?
Yes.
Is that the Alan Watts?
Yes. Michael says, thank you to Haden for coming on. More honest and straightforward than most apologists, not to mention a criterion of embarrassment is a win. No mention of criterion of embarrassment is a win. There you go.
I mean, I don't think it's a win, but it certainly does raise probability.
Okay, it looks like we got most of the questions.
Sure. It was fun.
Yeah, 500,000 pine points if you can convert Jim Majors, which I think he is the CEO of Atheists.
So does he have something to lose?
What's the name of your organization, Jim Majors? Atheists Against Christians Who Want Christians to Burn in Hell. Is that no? What's your organization?
I was gonna say that took off real quick.
I'm making it sound as bad as possible.
It's
just to build you up once you convert him.
I can look him up on Twitter real quick. I think it was in his bio. I'm sorry, I've looked at Jim Majors' Twitter bio because I have a whole thing on you as well, Doug, because I was going to have you on my show before you invited me on yours.
What do you mean you have a whole thing on me? You have a folder on me or what?
Yeah, I've got a whole file over here, and I know everything about you, Doug. No, okay. I meant I knew some. I really just meant I knew some information about you, and I noted, and so I went and looked at Jim Majors' YouTube channel and his Twitter the other day because he seemed like somebody I might enjoy talking to on the channel, and I did see that he was the CEO of some atheist organization.
Yeah, I'm the CEO.
I'm not that creepy. I am pretty creepy, but no, actually, it doesn't say it on there.
I'm the CEO of Pinecreek mega organization.
It's impressive.
Yeah, I have thousands of employees dependent on me.
So you can't deconvert.
I can't
or convert, I guess.
Well, I don't make much money from this channel because I don't.
How does the thing work? You said somebody donated X amount of money in the chat section?
Yeah, that was my dad. My dad, Edgar.
Oh, is it really?
You want to see a picture of my dad?
I'd love to see. Is it really your dad?
No, it isn't. Yeah, so basically in Super Chat.
Can you blow it up?
It's called Super Chat. Once you get 1,000 subscribers,
yeah,
people can press a little button and donate.
I didn't even know that was a thing. I'm the millennial. I'm supposed to know like this sort of stuff.
Yeah,
I'm not very technologically savvy.
It took me a while a few months to figure out how to use XSplit and do all this sort of thing. But
okay, yeah. So are you on what video software are you using?
XSplit.
Are we still live?
Yeah, we're still live.
Oh. Sorry.
DV Cisco, thank you for the donation. What is Haden's channel, please? Actually, yeah, let's do that first. I'm going to put it in the chat. What is your...
It's Help Me Believe. I don't know if there's multiple of those or not, but that's the name of it.
Yeah, let me find it here. Do you have... how many subscribers
don't Google it because it's 260 or something like that.
Oh, okay, yeah, you can't monetize yet.
Nope. Still poor.
Well, I was one of the early adopters to Tom Jump's channel, and he was like at 80 subs, 120, something like that. And then he came on this channel, and then poof, he was like at 300, 400, 500.
It's the Doug effect.
It's like, I don't know for miracles, but to me that was a miracle.
Yeah, it's pretty miraculous.
How come when I type "Help Me Believe" in YouTube, I don't get you? Oh, I found you.
Oh,
Here it is. Yes. Oh, you do much better than me in advertising here.
Yeah, I do have a Patreon link. Yeah.
Okay.
It doesn't work, but I got one.
Pinecreek, any interest in interviewing the Family Research Council's former lead homosexuality researcher?
That would be interesting.
I don't know what I would interview.
Yeah. Is this...
It doesn't ring my bell, Daniel, sorry. Usually what determines whether or not I do interviews or whatever I do, Daniel, it's whether I get a dopamine rush from it.
Did you get one today?
Yeah, I got a little bit of a dopamine rush. Serotonin, nice. Dopamine? Yeah, dopamine.
Should be dopamine.
Yeah. Which is what you experienced that day when you're riding in that car.
I was doped out of my mind whenever that happened.
Dev Null says, I should say that we're not live. Yeah, pretend we're not live right now. We can have the real
Pretend we're not live and try and catch me off guard, yeah.
DB Cisco says he subbed to your channel. So you got
nice, thank you. Thank you.
But yeah, we should really get going now. I love doing that. I love playing the music and then have people leave. And then they find out.
Then we find out who the real followers are.
It's a great strategy because it forces people to not click off just when they hear the music going. It forces them, maybe Doug's going to call an audible and keep going.
Yeah, it's like those Avenger movies. If you hang around after the credits, there's a little sneak peek.
Okay, now you can press the X because I have nothing more to say to you. So,
well,
I'll email you.
Thanks
Thank
so
you
much.
again. And,
yeah, it was a lot of fun. I appreciate it, Doug.
Okay, take care. Bye.
Yeah, you too.
Loving the Lord is wrong. I don't want to be right. I'm not coming back this time, guys. Leave. Go away. Seriously, I have nothing more to say. I do like Haden, though. True, I poofed him and I brought him back to life. I am like Yahweh. Mishkan, thank you so much. Annual appreciation. How did you come up with that number? $20.19. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. I'm not just waiting here for donations to come in. I care about you guys. I want to see if you have anything to say. But seriously, you can leave. So all you apologists out there, Haden showed you how it's done. This is worth at least 3 months at Viola. Have a great weekend, guys. Take care.